Lyra stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror, a grim satisfaction settling over her features. The dress she wore was, without question, the most hideous garment she owned, perhaps the most hideous in the entire kingdom of Valoria. The once white fabric had faded to a dingy gray after years of neglect, with mysterious stains dotting the bodice that no amount of scrubbing had managed to remove. The hem hung unevenly, fraying at the edges, and the sleeves were too short, exposing her wrists in a manner considered highly improper for court. It was perfect. "My lady, please," begged Myra, her lady's maid, wringing her hands in distress. "The king will be furious. This is an important diplomatic visit." "The king is always furious about something," Lyra replied, adjusting the lopsided collar. "Besides, I'm merely a lady-in-waiting. No one will notice me." That was the plan, at least. For weeks, the palace had buzzed with preparations for the arrival of Alpha King Thorn of the neighboring kingdom of Ravenwood. Rumor had it he was seeking a bride, and every eligible noble daughter in Valoria had been preening and plotting to catch his eye. Every daughter except Lyra, she had heard. The whispers about King Thorn, how he collected beautiful things, and beautiful women like trophies, how his temper was as legendary as his wealth, how those who displeased him simply ... disappeared. "Your father is the king's most trusted advisor," Mira reminded her. "You will be seated at the high table. Everyone will notice." Lyra's jaw tightened. Her father, Lord Everett, had made his expectations abundantly clear. She was to charm the foreign king, to represent their family with grace and beauty, to be, as he had so delicately put it, an asset rather than an embarrassment for once. She reached for a hairbrush, deliberately tangling her copper curls rather than smoothing them. "Then let them notice a woman who refuses to be paraded like cattle at auction." Mira sighed, defeated. "At least wear the pearl earrings. They were your mother's." At the mention of her mother, Lyra's resolve softened slightly. She accepted the small jewelry box, opening it to reveal the simple pearl drops, the last gift from her mother before illness had claimed her 3 winters ago. With gentle fingers, she fastened them to her ears, the elegant pearls creating a stark contrast against her disheveled appearance. A sharp knock at the door made both women jump. "Lyra." Her father's voice boomed through the wood. "The procession has been spotted approaching the city gates. Everyone is gathering in the great hall. Do not be late." "Yes, father," she called back, her voice carefully modulated to hide her rebellion. When his footsteps faded, Lyra turned back to the mirror. The woman who stared back was a contradiction, deliberately unkempt, yet with a defiant spark in her. Emerald eyes that no shabby dress could dim. The pearls at her ears seemed to glow with an inner light, catching the afternoon sun streaming through her chamber windows. "He won't even look twice at me," she assured Mira, though something in her gut twisted with uncertainty. King Thorn will be too busy assessing the kingdom's more polished jewels. Myra didn't look convinced. "There's something you should know about Alpha King Thorn that isn't in the rumors, my lady." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "They see. He has the gift of true sight, that he can see beyond appearances to what lies beneath. A gift passed down through the royal bloodline of Ravenwood." Lyra scoffed, though a chill ran down her spine. "Superstitious nonsense. Next you'll tell me he can transform into a wolf under the full moon." Mira's silence was telling. "Mira, you can't possibly believe I'm simply repeating what I've heard," the maid said defensively. "But they say the royal line of Ravenwood is ... different, more than human." Lyra shook her head, dismissing the fantastical tales. "Well, human or not, he'll find nothing of interest in me." She moved to her writing desk, where a half-finished letter lay open. It was addressed to her cousin in the coastal province of Plee, to take her in should she need to flee the capital. Lyra had been working on an escape plan for weeks, ever since her father had hinted at his ambitions for a match between her and some noblemen. She hadn't anticipated King Thorn's visit specifically, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Folding the letter carefully, she tucked it into a hidden pocket she'd sewn into the dress. Perhaps its only useful feature. If father asks, "Tell him I went ahead to the Great Hall," Lyra instructed, moving toward the door. "Where are you really going?" Myra asked, knowing her too well. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. "To the library. I'll slip into the hall, just as the procession arrives when everyone's attention is elsewhere." The royal library was her sanctuary, the one place in the palace where she felt truly at peace. Among the ancient tomes and scrolls, she could lose herself for hours, forgetting the expectations that weighed on her as a nobleman's daughter as she slipped through the corridors. Servants rushed past with last-minute preparations, too busy to notice her. Outside, the distant sound of trumpets announced the approaching procession. She had perhaps an hour before her presence would be required. In the library, dust motes danced in the afternoon light, streaming through high windows. Lyra ran her fingers along the spines of leather-bound books, breathing in the comforting smell of parchment and ink. Here, at least, she could pretend that her future remained her own to determine. She selected a volume on ancient folklore ironically, one that contained tales of the mysterious Alpha Kings of Ravenwood, and settled into a window alcove. If she was to face this foreign king, she might as well arm herself with knowledge, however fantasticile. As she read about enhanced senses and preternatural intuition, about kings who could sense deception and see into souls, Lyra's confidence and her plan began to waver. What if there was truth to these legends? What if her worst dress wasn't enough to hide her from a man who could see beyond appearances? The distant trumpets grew louder, and Lyra closed the book with a snap. Time had run out. Whatever happened next, she would face it with the same defiance that had led her to don this pitiful dress in the first place. With a deep breath, she stepped out of her sanctuary and toward the great hall, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The great hall of Valoria's palace blazed with light from 1,000 candles. Their flames reflected and polished marble floors and gilded mirrors. Nobles lined the sides of the hall in their finest attire, a kaleidoscope of silks and jewels that shimmered with each movement. At the far end, King Aldrich of Valoria sat upon his throne, his crown catching the light as he surveyed his subjects with practiced regality. Lyra slipped in through a side entrance, just as the main doors began to open. She positioned herself behind a cluster of courtiers, using their elaborate gowns and tall headdresses as shields. From this vantage point, she could observe without being observed, or so she thought. The herald's voice rang out, echoing against the vaulted ceiling. His Royal Majesty, Alpha King Thorn of Ravenwood, protector of the northern realms, guardian of the ancient forest, and keeper of the sacred flame. A hush fell over the assembly as the doors swung wide, revealing a procession unlike any seen before. First came the standard-bearers, carrying banners of deep crimson emblazoned with a black wolf's head. Behind them marched the royal guard, their armor not the polished silver of Valorian soldiers, but a burnished bronze that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And then he appeared. King Thorn of Ravenwood entered the hall with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and powerful. He was taller than any man present, his broad shoulders draped in a cloak of midnight fur that swept the floor behind him. But it was his face that drew every eye-sharp features carved as if from stone, a strong jaw darkened with the shadow of a beard, and eyes of such an unusual amber color that they appeared to glow in the candlelight. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Women adjusted their postures, tilting chins and lowering eyelashes in practiced coquetry. Men straightened their spines, caught between deference and the instinctive challenge that Thorn's presence seemed to evoke. Lyra found herself holding her breath, transfixed, despite her determination to remain unaffected. There was something about him that transcended mere physical appearance, an aura of power that seemed to fill the hall like a tangible force. King Aldrich rose from his throne, arms outstretched in welcome. King Thorn, Valoria is honored by your presence. It has been too long since our kingdoms celebrated peace together. Thorn inclined his head, a gesture that managed to convey respect without submission. King Aldrich, the honor is mine. Ravenwood values its alliance with Valoria above all others. His voice was deep and resonant, with an accent that hinted at ancient forests and wild places. As he spoke, his gaze swept the hall in a single, assessing glance, and then stopped. On Lyra, their eyes met across the crowded space, amber locking with emerald, and Lyra felt a jolt like lightning through her veins. For an impossible moment, it seemed as if everyone else in the hall had vanished, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. Then Thorn's expression changed. A flicker of surprise followed by something darker, more intense. His nostrils flared slightly, as if catching a scent on the air, and his lips curved into the barest hint of a smile predatory and knowing. Lyra shrank back, heart hammering against her ribs. It was impossible. She was half hidden behind Lady Elspeth's enormous feathered headdress, dressed in her shabbiest gown. How had he spotted her, so easily among hundreds of more noticeable courtiers? King Aldrich, oblivious to the silent exchange, continued with the formal introductions. May I present my council members and their families? One by one, the highest-ranking nobles stepped forward with their sons and daughters, each bowing or curtsying before the foreign king. Thorn acknowledged them with appropriate courtesy, but his attention seemed divided, his gaze repeatedly drifting back to where Lyra stood. When her father, Lord Everett, was announced, Lyra had no choice but to step forward. She moved reluctantly into the open space before the thrones, keeping her eyes downcast, as protocol demanded. My daughter, Lady Lyra, her father said, his voice tight with barely concealed anger as he took in her appearance. She sank into a curtsy, the uneven hem, her dress pooling around her in sad gray folds. When she rose, she found King Thorn standing directly before her, much closer than he had been to any other introduction. Lady Lyra, he said, her name in his mouth sounding like something precious and rare. What an unexpected pleasure. There was amusement in his voice, but something else too, a hunger that made her skin prickle with awareness. Up close, his eyes were even more unsettling, flecked with gold and possessing a depth that seemed to see through her shabby disguise. To the defiance beneath, Your Majesty, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Welcome to Valoria. He took her hand before she could withdraw it, raising it to his lips in a gesture that was customary, yet somehow transformed into something intimate. By the heat of his touch and the intensity of his gaze, Your kingdom is as beautiful as they say, he murmured against her skin, full of hidden treasures. The double meaning was unmistakable. As his lips brushed her knuckles, Lyra felt a strange sensation, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed within her. Something ancient and instinctive recognized him, reached for him. Even as her rational mind recoiled, when he released her hand, she stepped back quickly, nearly tripping on her dress. A smirk played at the corners of his mouth, as if her discomfort pleased him. The introductions continued, but Lyra barely registered them. She retreated to the edge of the hall, trying to calm her racing heart. What had just happened? Why had King Thorn singled her out when she had done everything possible to be overlooked? The formal ceremony concluded, transitioning into a feast where musicians played and servants circulated with trays of wine. Lyra found herself seated at the high table as Mira had predicted, though, thankfully, several places away from King Thorn. Still, she could feel his gaze on her throughout the meal, a tangible weight that made it impossible to eat. "What were you thinking?" her father hissed when he managed to corner her between courses. "That dress you've humiliated me before the entire court." "I'm sorry, father," she said automatically, though she felt no remorse. "I was unwell this morning and had no time to change." Lord Everett's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Fix this. Now King Thorn has requested the honor of the first dance after the feast. You will accept, and you will be charming. Or so help me, he requested me." Lyra interrupted, genuinely shocked. "But why would he? I neither know nor care about his reasons," her father snapped. "Perhaps he enjoys a challenge. Perhaps he wishes to humiliate you, as you have humiliated me. Either way, you will dance with him, and you will salvage what you can of our family's reputation." With that, he returned to his seat, leaving Lyra frozen in dismay. Across the table, King Thorn raised his goblet to her in a silent toast, his amber eyes gleaming with triumph. She had tried to make herself invisible, and instead had managed to become the focus of the very attention she had sought to avoid. As the feast drew to a close and servants cleared the tables to make way for dancing, Lyra realized with growing dread that her plan had not merely failed. It had backfired spectacularly. The musicians struck up a lively tune as servants pushed the long tables against the walls, transforming the great hall into a ballroom. More cheers gathered in anticipation, the ladies adjusting their elaborate hairstyles, while gentlemen straightened their doublets. At the center of it all stood King Thorn, commanding attention without effort, his powerful presence drawing every eye except Lyra's. She had slipped away during the commotion, fleeing through a servant's passage that led to the palace gardens. The night air was cool against her flushed skin as she hurried down a gravel path, the sounds of music and laughter fading behind her. The gardens were her second sanctuary after the library, a maze of hedges, fountains, and hidden alcoves, where she had played as a child and sought solitude as a young woman. Tonight, the full moon bathed everything in silver light, casting long shadows across manicured lawns and turning the central fountain into a cascade of liquid diamonds. Lyra made her way to a secluded bench beneath an ancient oak tree, its massive branches creating a canopy that hid her from casual observation. Here she could breathe again, away from the suffocating expectations of the court and the disturbing attention of the foreign king. What had possessed him to single her out? Was it some perverse game to choose the plainest, most disheveled woman in the room? Or worse, had he somehow divined her deliberate attempt to avoid him and decided to punish her for it? "Running away, Lady Lyra." The deep voice came from behind her, sending a jolt of alarm through her body. "How disappointing. I was looking forward to our dance." She whirled around to find King Thorn standing at the edge of the oak's shadow, his tall figure outlined in moonlight. How had he approached so silently? And how had he found her so quickly in the vast royal gardens? "Your Majesty," she said, rising hastily and dropping into a curtsy. "Forgive me, I needed some air. Did you?" He stepped closer, moving with that same predatory grace she had noticed earlier. In the moonlight, his eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. "Or perhaps you needed to escape." Lyra straightened her spine, refusing to be intimidated despite the rapid beating of her heart. "I'm not accustomed to such grand gatherings. the noise can be ... overwhelming indeed. He circled her slowly, like a wolf assessing its prey. Sensitive hearing can be such a burden. I understand completely. Sensitive hearing? Lyra echoed, confused by his strange comment, among other senses. Thorn completed his circle, coming to stand directly before her. In the moonlight, his features seemed sharper, more defined, almost inhuman in their perfection. Tell me, Lady Lyra, do you always dress so ... deliberately? Heat rushed to her cheeks. I don't know what you mean, don't you? His voice dropped lower, a rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Stress, he reached out, catching a frayed edge between his fingers, is not the result of poverty or neglect. It was chosen with purpose. Lyra stepped back, pulling the fabric from his grasp. You presume too much, Your Majesty. Do I? A smile curved his lips, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally sharp. Then explain. The pearls at your ears clearly valuable, well maintained. They tell a different story than this garment. She instinctively touched the pearl earrings, cursing herself for the one concession she had made to beauty. They were my mother's. Ah. Something softened in his expression. Sentiment. A powerful force. Why are you here, Your Majesty? Lyra asked, finding courage in her growing irritation. Surely there are dozens of ladies inside who would be delighted by your attention. Dozens, he agreed, his gaze never leaving her face. All dressed in their finest silks and jewels, all hoping to catch my eye. And yet, the only woman who interests me is the one who dressed specifically to repel me. Lyra's breath caught. There was no point in denying it now. How did you know? I told you. I have sensitive senses. He tapped the side of his nose. I can smell deception as clearly as I can smell the lavender oil in your hair, which, by the way, contradicts your disheveled appearance. No truly neglectful woman would use such fine scent. That's impossible, she whispered, though she remembered Mira's warnings about the Alpha King's supernatural abilities. Is it? He moved closer, and this time she held her ground. What else do you know about me, Lady Lyra? What tales have you heard that made you so determined to avoid my notice? The moonlight caught in his amber eyes, and for a moment, Lyra could have sworn they flashed gold, like a wolf's eyes reflecting firelight. A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the night air. They say you collect beautiful things, she admitted. And beautiful women. Ah, he nodded slowly. And you feared becoming part of my collection? I am no one's possession, Filer said firmly, lifting her chin in defiance. To her surprise, Thorn threw back his head and laughed a rit. Genuine sound that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish. No, clearly you are not. Which is precisely why you caught my attention, Lady Lyra. He gestured to the bench she had vacated. May I join you? I promise to maintain a respectful distance. Warily Lyra sat, and Thorn settled beside her, leaving space between them as promised. For a moment, they sat in silence, the sounds of the garden rustling leaves, distant fountain splashes, night insects enveloping them. The rumors about me, he said finally, are greatly exaggerated, though not entirely without foundation. The rumors about me, he said finally, are greatly exaggerated, though not entirely without foundation. Which parts are true? She asked, curiosity overcoming caution. I do appreciate beauty, he admitted, but I have never collected women. That would imply ownership, and as you so rightly observed, people are not possessions. Then why are you here in Valoria? Everyone says you seek a bride. Thorn turned to look at her, his expression serious. I seek an alliance. My council believes a marriage would strengthen the bonds between our kingdoms. And what do you believe? A smile touched his lips. I believe in recognizing truth when I see it. Like the truth of a woman who would rather appear shabby than be valued only for her appearance. Lyra looked down at her tattered dress, suddenly seeing it through his eyes not as clever camouflage, but as a transparent attempt at deception. You must think me childish. On the contrary, his voice was gentle now. I find your rebellion refreshing. Do you know how many women I've met who have never had an original thought in their lives? Who exist solely to please others? Too many, I imagine. Indeed, he sighed, looking up at the moon. The burden of my position is that I rarely encounter honesty. People show me what they think I wish to see. And what do you wish to see? Lyra asked softly. Thorn's gaze returned to her, intense and searching. Reality, truth. A person who exists for herself, not for others' expectations. Something shifted between them in that moment, recognition that transcended their brief acquaintance. Lyra felt as if he were seeing parts of her that she had shown to no one, not even herself. There are rumors about you as well, he said after a pause. About abilities beyond those of ordinary men. Yes, he nodded, unashamed. The royal line of Ravenwood carries ancient blood. We see more clearly, sense more deeply. Some call it magic. I call it inheritance. Can you truly see beyond appearances? I can see you, Lyra, he said simply. The real you, beneath that ridiculous dress and tangled hair. The woman who reads ancient texts in hidden corners of the library. Who dreams of more than the limited future her father has planned. Her heart stuttered. How could you possibly know that? Your fingers are stained with ink, he pointed out. There's a crease on your wrist where you've rested it on a book for hours. And I followed your scent to the library before finding you here. My scent? She repeated, incredulous. Instead of answering, he leaned closer, inhaling deeply near her neck. The gesture should have been offensive, invasive yet. Lyra found herself frozen. Not with fear, but with a strange anticipation. Lavender, yes, he murmured. But beneath that, something uniquely yours. Something I recognized the moment I entered your king's hall. Recognized. Her voice was barely a whisper now. Thorn's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something ancient and powerful and unmistakably hungry. There is another truth about the Alpha Kings of Ravenwood that the rumors don't mention. Lyra, we recognize our mates on sight. One scent, one glimpse, and we know. The implication of his words hung in the air between them, impossible yet undeniable. Lyra's mind raced to process what he was suggesting, even as something deep within her responded to his claim with instinctive recognition. That's absurd, she managed finally. We've only just met. You know nothing about me. I know everything that matters, he countered. The rest your favorite color, your childhood memories, your hopes and fears, those I look forward to discovering. If you'll allow it. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the direction of the palace voices calling her name. The bobbing lights of lanterns as servants and guards spread out through the gardens. It seems you've been missed, Thorn observed, rising to his feet and offering her his hand. Shall we return and give them something new to gossip about? Lyra stared at his outstretched hand, poised at the edge of a decision that felt monumental. To accept would be to acknowledge something she didn't fully understand, a connection that defied rational explanation. I need time, she said finally. This is ... overwhelming. Thorn nodded, lowering his hand without offense. Of course. Time is one thing I'm willing to give, Lady Lyra. But know this, his voice deepened, taking on a resonance that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her soul. I have found you now, and an Alpha King does not easily relinquish what belongs to him. With that declaration hanging in the air, he stepped back into the shadows, leaving Lyra alone with the approaching search party and the unsettling realization that her attempt to avoid notice had instead marked her for the most dangerous attention of all. The following day, a package arrived. In Lyra's chambers, a midnight blue gown that shimmered like starlight when it caught the light, accompanied by a note in bold, angular script. For when you tire of hiding, no expectations, only a gift freely given. It's magnificent, Mira breathed, touching the fabric. I've never seen material like this. It's woven with moonlight, Lyra murmured, remembering tailies from the library. A secret craft known only to Ravenwood. Before she could decide whether to wear it, her father stormed in, his face tight with barely contained fury. What did you say to King Thorn last night? He has requested a private audience with you this afternoon. King Aldrich has granted it, and you will attend. This is a diplomatic matter. Now Thorn mentioned that his continued interest in an alliance depends on this meeting. In the East Solaire at midday, Thorn waited by the window, his posture alert as if he had sensed her approach before she entered. Lady Lyra, he acknowledged without turning. Punctual, another quality I admire. What do you want from me? She asked directly, tired of diplomatic games. He gestured to a pair of chairs where refreshments waited. I want to tell you a story about what it means to be an Alpha King. Thorn spoke of his ancestors packed with forest spirits, granting them enhanced abilities, but condemning them to isolation, until the spirits revealed that, for each Alpha King, there existed one mate who could balance their power. Someone who sees us as clearly as we see them, he explained. From the moment I entered your King's Hall, every sense I possess focused on you, not because of your appearance, but despite it. Your deliberate disguise made no difference. Even if I believed this fantastic tale, Lyra said carefully, what does it mean for me? I'm offering you freedom, he replied. Freedom from the future your father has planned. In Ravenwood would be valued for your mind and spirit, not appearances or bloodline. He placed a key on the table. This opens a chamber with texts about my kingdom. Read them, learn who I am, then decide. 3 days during which I will not seek you out or pressure you. For 3 days, Lyra immersed herself in Ravenwood's history, learning of mates who had brought balance to rulers who might otherwise have descended into tyranny, and discovering that the royal line could indeed shift their form under certain conditions. On the 3rd evening, her father summoned her with wonderful news. She was to be betrothed to Lord Cassius, the Duke of Westmere's son, with the contract signing scheduled for tomorrow. A perfect match, her father declared. Willing to overlook your eccentricities in exchange for the connection to our family. Overlook my eccentricities? Lyra repeated, anger rising. You mean my intelligence? My independence? The very qualities that make me who I am? Those things matter little in a wife, Lord Everett dismissed. Your duty is to make an advantageous match for our family. No, Lyra said firmly. I will not marry Lord Cassius. I will not be used as a pawn in your political games any longer. As her father grabbed her arm threateningly, a voice cut through the room. Take your hand off her. King Thorn stood in the doorway, his powerful frame radiating danger despite his casual stance. The 3 days are up. Have you reached a decision? Understanding the choice before her between a life dictated by others and one she could shape herself, Lyra stepped toward him. Yes, she said, placing her hand in his. My answer is yes. Thorn smiled, then presented her with a wooden box containing a key to Ravenwood's royal library. 10,000 volumes collected across centuries. There is one condition, he added, his voice a rumble. That you wear the midnight gown for our departure tomorrow? I've waited long enough to see you, as you truly are no disguises, no pretenses. The following morning, as Lyra descended the stairs in the shimmering gown that made her look like she had captured the night sky, Thorn waited below, his amber eyes glowing with pride and possession. Beautiful, he murmured, though they both knew he meant far more than her appearance. Ready? He asked, offering his arm. Lyra smiled, placing her hand on his sleeve. Ready? Together, they walked toward a future neither had anticipated, but both now embraced, built not on appearances or politics, but on truth, recognized and freely chosen.